Hey, good morning, everyone. And here it is, relatively early morning in the Temple of Silence here in Finland. And you can see in back of me the dawn is just beginning, and in a little, just a number of weeks, it'll be dark in the morning until 9:30, something like that, at least down south here. Well, I'm a bit on my own today. Some of you have requested certain things, but there are no staff members with me right now, so I will just have to do the best we can. Um, Sometimes it's very, very early on the East Coast, and also people are not available for internet. And as far as seeing my well, what can I call it? The any kind of image before I come on. I'm not capable of doing that without opening the whole thing up. So anyway, I think we're ready to go. I think we should have just a little bit of an alignment, and then we're going to be completing this. Well, completing. Okay. It's a great triangle, which is zodiacal and comes from, in a way, even before that, from the three great constellations, as we call them, the Great Bear, Sirius, as sometimes a blind for the Little Bear, and then the Pleiades, which probably has to be considered in a number of ways. I do believe that finally the Pleiades, as a cluster of nigh unto 1,000 stars, uh, provides the head center of the one about whom naught may be said, with each star representing a petal in the head center lotus. Well, that remains to be confirmed because I think 800 and something have been discovered, and we have to get up to about 960 in order for that particular analogy to operate. So, just before our meditation, I want to just welcome those of you who are here. You know, I can only do that once, but good morning, and whatever it is for you, to Anne and Annette and Antoinette and Barbara and Barbro and Jean-Pierre and Karen, Carrie, Lori, Marianne, Marissa, Martha, Nathania, Rebecca, Risto, Stacia, and of course Tuya's here with me, but in another part of the house, Vera and Zenaidi and Anne Veronica. So welcome to all of you, and let's see if we can understand some of the larger picture. I think that in the Ask Triangles meditation that Tui offers on Wednesdays, we do get the really practical side of the whole thing, and we do as the Tibetan asks us to do with our own little groups of triangles. But every couple of weeks, at least the way it stands right now, unless I can make it every week, I don't know. But anyway, every couple of weeks, we venture into the larger cosmological picture. And it is relevant. You know, we say, well, what about these sources? They're way out there. They're so far away. Do they really affect us? But they do. And the greater our initiatory development, as in the direction of the Tibetan who understands these energies, the more we will see, excuse me, the way in which everything is affected by the super constellations. So let us just have a little quiet. as we are coming together as a group, scattered all over the world, really, but in one space of consciousness, we might call it, to be sensitive to the understanding, the meaning of the greater sources. We try to be cognizant that there are so many triangles within our etheric body and triangles within the etheric body of humanity and triangles within the etheric body of our globe and chain, and finally planetary scheme. And if we were to venture out into the solar system, the great planetary sources, not to mention, other planetoids and asteroids and so forth, are connected triangularly and send their influence to Earth, to the great triangle Shambhala hierarchy and humanity and other kingdoms, of course. And that's not all. Those are triangles between planets, but we have all of these solar logoi and their blazing expressions as suns of various kinds and colors. And there are triangles between them. I mean, I'll give you an example. Maybe there's a triangle between our sun and its logos, the sun Sirius and its logos, and the sun Procyon and its logos, which would cover the Syrian head, the Procyon ajna, and the heart, represented by our solar logos. And so when you look into the sky, especially for practical purposes in our local cosmos system, you discover that there are links between these great logoi. But of course, that's not all. Within the body of our one about whom naught may be said, as there are maybe 49 of them locally, there are constellations that are linked by triangles. And maybe we might say, here's a triangle, give you an example. Our local 7 solar systems, of which our solar system is one. The constellation Orion and the constellation of the Little Bear. There's links between the logoi, or the lords of those great systems, just the way there would be between an ajna, a heart, and a solar plexus. Of course, that has to remain speculative as to how you assign these different constellations. But of course, if we go into the zodiac, our zodiacal constellations, we're right into the heart in the head center of the one about whom naught may be said. And we know DK has presented triangles, which are basically ray triangles between these zodiacal constellations, like, for instance, Aries, Leo, Capricorn. The lords of those constellations are connected, or Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, and so forth. Every ray having its triangle. But that certainly isn't all. If we were to go to the one about whom naught may be said, here, let's say that this green triangle is our local one about whom naught may be said. Well, then the other ones are also related to each other triangularly, and we don't know how. It's way beyond our ken, and it's probably something the Solar Logos himself is working on to understand that kind of relationship. And all of the things shown on this amazing chart can be organized triangularly until we reach this something called a cosmic parabrum. Maybe it's the arm of a galaxy. It's hard to say just what it is, but it's not a galaxy. It's not big enough for a galaxy. But of course, we extend the analogy, and the galaxies themselves, the Milky Way, Andromeda, and one other galaxy not named will be in a triangle, and the local galaxies will be triangularly related, and on, families of galaxies. The triangle thing goes all the way to the top. So we have to open our minds to those vast possibilities in which we are just like tiny little atoms, That's all we are. But we're more than that, ultimately. So it's a huge picture. And sometimes having a huge picture can induce the necessary sense of humility, which human beings so badly need at this time. And right now, of course, we're organizing on the level of our own etheric system, and we're organizing on the level of people, soul-infusing personalities within humanity, and communities, and cities, and continental centers, like the triangle, let's say, between New York, London, and Geneva. There are a number of such. And, those are the ones that will be of importance to us, and between kingdoms, of course, and between kingdoms. Shambhala, hierarchy, humanity. So, just think in a triangular manner when you look at the realities before your outer eye and your inner eye, and realize that you, at the moment, a tiny little emanation, you're connected to all of this universal triangularization. The outlines of which will be clarified as we learn more and more, and become more elevated in our initiatory capabilities, and serve the hierarchy more completely, and become members of the hierarchy. Much will clarify. So let's just sound an Om to kind of confirm this picture. Now, what we've been doing is to look at the Great Triangle of Great Bear, Sirius, and Pleiades. And now it's time to look at the Pleiades. And as you see, there is in the third column, there's a sixfold descent of energy. Now, you can consider the Pleiades in a number of ways. It is, from the chakra point of view, an immense constellation or even cluster of stars around which our 7 solar systems and other systems revolve, at least according to occultism. So we can consider it in relation to humanity. We've considered the shambolic column. We've considered a couple of weeks ago the hierarchical column, the second one, and now we consider that column that relates to humanity. And it seems to go from the Pleiades, representing the third aspect, through the constellation Capricorn, which has a number of rays which come through it, including the third ray, and then through the planet Mercury. These are different kinds of relationships here. You know, Mercury is not really a ruler of Capricorn, except maybe at some point kind of a decanate ruler, the third decanate. And then through humanity and through the planetary action center. Now, what is that? That is humanity in a way, but it's also the new group of world servers. And then we get down to the microcosmic little human being through the Ajna Center, which eventually, by the way, is ruled by Mercury. You know how Venus at first is the ruler there, but Mercury has a lot of the fourth ray and fifth ray, and will eventually, and at certain higher states of awareness, rule the Ajna Center, and then to the throat center, which again is very Mercurian through its third ray. It's not given as a ruler of the throat center usually, but it's obvious that in the formation of speech and thought, or in the correct order, thought and speech, Mercury is active at the throat center. So I think we can understand this descent where a kingdom in nature, the human kingdom, applies the will and the love of a greater entity to redemptive conditions, or conditions that are meant to be redeemed here on the planet. And it does so through acute intelligence, creative intelligence, active intelligence. And we have to understand that while the soul ray of Mercury is pretty much given to us as the fourth ray, there's a dual monadic aspect to this planetary logos, and the fifth ray is there. The 5 fingers on your hand are ruled by Mercury. It has a very deep fifth ray intelligence. And finally, if we look for the 1, 2, and 3 of it all, which finally we have to have, because, you know, on the higher levels here, you can see that only 3 exist, whereas 7 exist here, 7 planetary loci, only 3 ray types, first, second, and third, exist here. So it's got to be one of those rays that is associated monadically, finally, with each planetary logos. And in the case of Mercury, it's, well, from my point of view, speculatively the third ray, just the way Venus is speculatively the second ray. I don't think there's much question about that. And then not Vulcan, but Earth, interestingly enough, we're given that its monadic ray is the first. So from some point of view, these are the three logoi: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the mother aspect. It ends with a 1, 2, 3. And thus it is for all of us, I believe. I think that as we begin to ascend and remove veil after veil that confines our sense of identity, we will discover on the higher levels of the cosmic physical plane our true monadic quality. And there will be two rays. They may both be the same, but there will be two rays, one that applies to the monadic level itself and can be any one of the seven, and one that applies to the sea of fire or logoic plane or one of the three cosmic logoi, and will necessarily be only one of the three. Now that's a discovery that lies before us as we begin to disidentify with the very circumscribed area that seemed to hold our sense of identity. And we'll just widen out and become far more than we thought we were. But that's a process of initiation, and we'll go along that path. Now, I want to read from the old commentary. So now that you have the idea of the of how it all works out in terms of a simple chart, we go to this symbolic language of the old commentary, which we have been doing anyway. And, when you're studying occultism, a lot of your success will come because you develop a type of symbolic reading. Well, we call it spiritual reading. And basically, we can look at any object within the three worlds and we can elevate that object so that it has a higher meaning in the world of the intuition. So we don't just look at something and take it at face value. We say, well, it is what it is in this, in the lower 18 subplanes, but what energy pattern does it represent on the higher planes? And we need the intuitive interpretation to do that. So when we are presented with the old commentary, which can be very enigmatic, then we are given the opportunity to begin our work with spiritual reading, or maybe we want to call it spiritual discernment, and we can elevate the present presented object into its higher source. And that's a skill that we begin to develop as we proceed into the arcane language of the old commentary. And it's not just there to fool us or to blind us. It's there to help us reach states of realization that could not be reached with the strictly logical, linear mind. So if you get frustrated, as I have often been, by certain statements in the old commentary, just stay with it, and maybe the source of the term or the object that you're dealing with will begin to appear. Okay, so let's take a look at this now. The little one upon that little world. So now we're dealing with the microcosm, and that's who we are at the moment. We're dealing with the human being, and the little world is Earth. Whether it's the little globe or the Earth chain, or finally even our Earth scheme, is a little one. You know, here in this, let's see if I can get there. Yeah, Tuya made these, and it looks complex from Cosmic Fire, but it's all the little one. This whole circle of 49 globes is all the little one, and they have lines of stimulation. Well, we're kind of interested in this tiniest sphere here, which is the one sphere with the material expression as well as higher expressions, because when you deal with the ruler of a globe, you're dealing with a great being. It's called a globe lord, and it has its own soul and monadic expression and so forth. So we're basically interested in what's happening on Earth globe, but there are connections with all these other globes that will be clarified as the initiatory scheme is revealed. So kind of, keep that kind of map in mind when we're talking about our planetary scheme. Now, the little one upon that little world responded slowly to that light. In comes the light of the second aspect, the light of the soul. And we're told, that 21 million years ago, the solar angelic arrows shot forth from the bow. But the little babe knew it not, and it took about 3 million years for the Sagittarian phase to give place to the Leonian phase, and the animal human being of the time begins to wake up to itself as a separate entity. I wonder if I can find that kind of marvelous statement. And if I would say bow, shot, no, I guess that's not going to do it, is it? Because what I have to do is contents. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to not just use esoteric astrology. I think it may be even white magic. Yep, probably is. Here it is. Treatise on White Magic. Amazing, isn't it, in this introductory book, how much information can be given? All right, so this took place 21 million years ago. Here's how it goes. The sons of God shot forth like arrows from the bow. Those are the solar angels. The forms of animal man received the impulse, and lo, a god was born. A human being, an animal plus a god. And now the tiny babe knew not the great event. In other words, the tiny consciousness of animal man didn't know what happened. But there was a lot of explosions, we might say, in those fiery events, and a lot of the forms of animal man were destroyed. And here it says something further. This took place 21 million years ago. Cycles passed, and at a later date, the sun was in Leo, approximately 18 million years ago, 18.5 million years ago. The hierarchy has the exact dates. The first instances of the coordination between brain and mind took place, and the human being was definitely self-conscious. He registered his individuality, and then the Tibetan gives some kind of figure of 21,688,345 years ago from the time of the writing. Now, some people have tried to explore these figures. Are they exact? Are they symbolic? For our purposes, we just need to know it took a while for the human being to wake up. So slowly the little one responded to that light, the light of the solar angel being implanted in the mind. We call it the spark of mind, until the little world of men began to throb in rhythmic unison. Now remember that Uranus is that electrical connection between spirit, soul, and body, and it's also a seventh ray planet. So that particular being is operative in this individualization process. And also, the spiritual hierarchy is having its rhythmic effect upon the elevation of the whole human family. This was a long time ago. Did all of us experience this? I would have to say no, because many of us took our individualization on the moon chain by another method. And maybe even some people, and who knows what the method would be, took a kind of individualization on the previous solar system and came into this solar system as a semi-completed egoic lotus, and the same for the moon chain egos. They had some petals open when they joined our particular chain. So, when you think about it, our sense of human history and planetary history is extremely compressed, confined, and inaccurate. And the vast scope of our development as human beings and planetarily is just not known unless we consult occultism. Changes are wrought. The cosmic heart, the heart systemic, and the little heart of man began to beat as one. Well, the cosmic heart, for practical purposes, the cosmic Christ, we have to consider that serious. There are many ways of looking at heart centers, and a number of solar logoi and different constellations fulfill the role um, of the heart center. But Sirius, in this context, can be considered the cosmic heart. The heart systemic, obviously, that's the solar logos. And the little heart of man, well, it's the causal body, but also our various heart centers in the head and between the shoulder blades begin to beat as one. And as this beat pulsates with greater strength, it blends a lower note. And AAB puts in for our edification here that the solar plexus is entrained in the process. Now notice here that indeed, well, it will be the case. Here the solar plexus is involved in the Syrian line with the heart center. Okay. So, and here's something that all of us should keep in mind. Every chakra, just like every planet and every solar logos, is ringing with a certain note of music. And that's the way the solar systemic sonata and the cosmic symphony and all that, that's how it's all put together through the music emanating from every one of the chakras in the various systems. So your solar plexus is sounding a certain note, maybe a certain fundamental note and other partial notes depending upon how it's developed, and thus it is with the heart center and every other chakra that we have. So let's just remind ourselves that chakras sound notes. That's maybe something we don't think about so much, but it seems to be the case. Now, we've been told that by those who are trying to measure it, that our sun is sounding the note G, G. And that makes a lot of sense when you consider that the previous solar system was sounding the note F, Fa, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Fa, for the Fa note. And we're one higher, we're the note G, we're the blue note. So there's a musical interpretation to all of this triangularization of the chakras. Now, think of it. You get three chakras together, you make a triangle. What is the chord created? Is it dissonant? Is it harmonious? Obviously, we're all tending towards harmony. When you just have two notes sounding, you get something we call an interval. It's simply two notes and the sort of vibratory space between them. Like the perfect fifth is 3/2. It has to do with vibratory ratios. But then when you get three notes together, you get a chord, and everything beyond that's a chord too. And the idea is, as DK lays out in Letters on Occult Meditation, we have to tune up our chord. Monad, soul, personality, matter. Tune the chord. And eventually, with the tuning and harmony, comes release. Okay. So anyway, it's all beating as one now, it blends a lower note within itself, removes its harshness and its note of fear. Phobos and Deimos, those two kind of asteroids or satellites of Mars, and what are they kind of called? Fear and terror, something like that. Mars is a pretty drastic planet when you really think of it. And the solar plexus is, above all, at first, a center of recoil and fear, and later of bravery. So when the heart quality begins to pulsate, it entrains the solar plexus, removes its harshness and its note of fear, and thus it ends illusion, and then again the two are one. So we're blending the solar plexus and the heart center, and all of us have to do that. Even Alice Bailey was doing that to a degree. When you study her life and how she was in the beginning, she was very much under the sixth ray, or at least maybe she was recapitulating something. It's hard to say. But, when she was in the army and she was a kind of religious worker in the armed forces of Britain, I suppose, and basically she was a fiery sixth ray preacher. And she was corrected in that, and later as the transition came more and more to the second ray, she became useful and usable by the Tibetan. So all of us cannot help but recapitulate what we have done. And the question is, when is that recapitulation over? And when does real progress in this life begin? If you look back upon your life, this incarnation, you may get the sense of when the recapitulation was finalized, and then when some kind of venturing into new areas of achievement really began to occur. It's worth considering. Okay, so that's a transition paragraph. And now we go on. The next paragraph still relates to the same sequence that we have been studying. Now, what's important about this is basically that high energies become transformed, stepped down, and applicable on lower vibratory levels. And we're connected with those streams. We are connected. Okay, the seven mothers blend their light and make it six, Now AAB is coming in here, and there is the tradition of the lost Pleiad. And maybe it is the star, the sister Maya, something or something like that. There's differing points of view as to which is the lost Pleiad, but the mythological story is that she hid her face in shame because she married a mortal. Now, who's that mortal? My impression is that there's a special connection between this lost Pleiad and the Earth. And the Earth, being a non-sacred planet, is a mortal. And I suppose the Pleiads are only supposed to engage with the sacred planets, and therefore, in a way, marry in a different way. They are also the wives of the seven rishis, but it doesn't make any difference. You can, in the world of mythology, you can have a lot of different wives and husbands. And there's a special relation here between whatever Pleiad that is and the Earth, I believe. And yet, seven there still are. Okay, and their light is different from the other lights, and maybe that has to do with the blending of the lost Pleiad and the Earth. So there are seven major Pleiads, but if we add the mother and father, Atlas and Pleione, we get nine. And these are distinct Pleiads, distinct from the hundreds of others with which they are aggregated. Now, someday, we as students of occultism, we're not studying every single detail of the head center, are we? But when you see some of these pictures of the Buddha, he seems to have on his head a bunch of different vortices and swirls. They are tiny little whirlpools in the head, and they represent all the different powers of the head center. Well, one day we will study each one of the Pleiads, and we'll see what the various stars contribute in terms of capacity and energy to the local cosmos system. Okay, so it's a question of six and seven, and there's a special case with one of the Pleiades. Now, it's kind of interesting because when you look in the Pleiades, they are hidden oftentimes in a kind of mist. There's a vapor, a veil, a vagueness around those stars, and they seem to be, some of them seem to be veiled. And I'm sure that whatever Pleiad we're talking about here is one of the prominently veiled Pleiads. You see, it's hidden in a myth, but there's a scientific fact, condition behind the myth. So this light evokes response from that which shouts aloud. Now, what is that? I am the densest point of all the concrete world. That's Capricorn. I am a tomb. I also am the womb. Okay, that which shouts aloud or speaks in its energy transmission is the constellation Capricorn, which is the densest constellation, or the constellation responsible for the greatest density in matter. But that's not all. It leads to liberation out of the dense element through the process of initiation. So you do see that the second step here is, in fact, I just have to go here. The second step is Capricorn, from the Pleiades to Capricorn. Now, the Pleiades have a reputation of a very strong third aspect of divinity. They also carry a lot of the cosmic buddhi. But Capricorn carries rays 1, 3, and 7. It's one of those constellations which carries 3 rays, at least 3 rays given to us. Maybe the 7th is the most important at this time, but the 3rd ray for disciples is the most important. So if you are a disciple and you're working on the 3rd ray in some respect, from Capricorn is coming that 3rd ray energy rather than from the sign Cancer. So this light from the Pleiades evokes a response from a planetary lord, a constellational lord that we call Capricorn, and that response is, I am the densest point of all the concrete world. It's not the whole truth, it's part of it. I am a tomb. So here we come to the kind of story of Christ being crucified and brought into the tomb, but he was resurrected as well, or the Master Jesus. And by the way, the Master Jesus traditionally has a lot of Capricorn in his horoscope, as well as the earth sign Virgo. I am also the womb. I am the womb of the Christ consciousness. Capricorn rules every initiation in part from the 1st to the 5th. Maybe beyond that, I don't know, maybe. But from the 1st to the 5th, those initiations have a strong Capricornian ingredient. So at first we wrap up and densify and contain and confine the inner consciousness, which has to blossom into Christ consciousness. And later in Capricorn, we reveal that. Now that's interesting because the Pleiades have this Christ aspect about them as well. From the dragon to the Pleiades comes a great infusion of cosmic Buddhi. And the Pleiades continue to transmit that to solar angels and to man. So just go to page 1162 of Cosmic Fire. I won't do that right now. And you will see the story. Okay, so the unit of consciousness is buried under the rock, so to speak, for a long time, but is then reborn and rejoices in the light, which Capricorn also represents, the light supernal. So I guess Capricorn is still talking, I am the rock which sinks itself into the deep of matter. And then here's the opposite side, the best and worst human beings, we are told, are born in Capricorn, and, hard, cruel, unfeeling, isolated. And, when you've looked at some of the real villains in the human development process, you've seen a lot of Capricorn present where people are very cruel. On the other hand, I am the mountaintop on which the sun is born. S-O-N, Venus, the light, the inner beauty of the Christ consciousness. I am the mountaintop of initiation on which the sun is born, on which the sun, S-U-N, is seen, a great symbol, the sun on the mountaintop, and that which catches the first rays of light from the higher worlds, from the cosmic ethers, the true and living light, not just the light of the dense physical body of the planetary or solar logos. But, when you look at this thing, where are we here? I want to get to his thing here because it's better. I mean, this is where the light really comes from. The light is coming from these 4 levels, cosmic etheric levels. There is a kind of light in this area of density, but it's old light and it's not liberated light. And the light that you catch upon the mountaintop is coming from the cosmic ethers, intuition, spiritual will, monadic being, logoic fire, whatever you want to call these things. Those are the kinds of lights which come to you on the mountaintop. Okay, so I am the mountaintop on which the sun is born, on which the sun, S-U-N, is seen, and that which catches the first rays of light. And I'm sure that Many of us have mountaintop experiences, and maybe some people have been mountain climbers or climbed, something of a mountain and seen some of the beauty that is possible in the early morning or maybe at night as well as evening comes. To me, now here comes who's talking. Maybe Capricorn is talking anyway. To me, a messenger comes. Who's that going to be? Obviously, Mercury, the messenger, and Master DK, having so much to do with Mercury, is called the messenger of the masters. And as far as that goes, Mercury is the messenger of the gods. So to be a messenger comes and says, quote, "The day spring from on high is on the way, sent by the father to the mother." Well, this third column is all about the mother energy. And it starts with the father, with the great bear, but eventually reaches the Pleiades. Probably in the last analysis, it all really starts with the Pleiades. But like what I said, the Pleiades have to be considered in different modes and different degrees of expansion and in different contexts. The day spring from on high, it sounds like the light of the cosmic ethers is on the way, sent by the father to the mother. Upon his way unto this nether star we call the earth. Now, sometimes, excuse me, planets are called stars. The star of Mercury, the star of Sirius. It's just part of the terminology. They shine, they're called stars. Upon his way to this nether star, we're not a sacred planet yet, but we are destined to have a relationship, and already do, between Venus, Mercury, and ourselves. Earth, Venus, Mercury. Earth being physical, Venus being emotional, Mercury being mental. Upon his way unto this nether star we call the earth, he stopped at a bright sun where shines the light of love, that is Sirius, and there received the accolade of love. Well, the whole point of initiation at this point is to introduce us to the love wisdom energy, and the first part of the initiatory process, especially that which comes under Sirius, introduces us to the love wisdom aspect. So he stopped and there received the accolade of love. So thus he, I suppose Mercury, brings gifts to man. These will be the gifts, I have said, the lighted gifts given by Mercury. He will give them to man, for Mercury and man are so closely related. Mercury is man. The whole human kingdom is Mercury, whereas the angel kingdom, in an allegorical way, is Venus. Mercury rules the fourth creative hierarchy of human monads. For he, Mercury, is man himself. And from these three, and AAB is very helpful. She puts in the parentheses guidance for us. Okay, for he is man himself, and from these three, the Pleiades, Capricorn, Mercury, man takes a nature which is his today. Son of the mother. That's it's like Virgo, right? I am the mother and the child. I God, I matter, am, right? Son of the mother, born from the tomb of matter, right? And showing after birth uh, the light which he has taken from them all. And our little planet is supposed to become a great station of light, and we little human beings are supposed to become stations of light. Then to the lower three he turns. Now these are the microcosmic parts. And to those souls in prison, he in time becomes a messenger. As we ascend in our initiatory status, we become the messenger to those who are not yet awakened. And thus does the Lord of Mercury repeat himself within man. Man becomes Mercury in replica, and we are the one who brings the light to others. So thus does the Lord of Mercury repeat himself. The sun descends again into the place of earth and iron. Now, okay, what is iron? Iron is the metal of Mars. And we have a huge Martian influence on our planet. And Venus is fighting with Mars over the rulership of our planet now, right now. And you can even see it working out before your eyes. So the sun, the Christ consciousness, descends again into earth and into this sphere where the personal elements are fighting for control. Now, Capricorn is uniting all of these, earth and iron, earth and Mars, and, so forth, as I've just said. And again, he knows his mother. The Christ consciousness infuses the mother aspect, but it's on a much lower turn of the spiral because it's again, and we all start to carry the Christ consciousness in our earth, in our iron, in our personality. We carry this higher form of love, wisdom, consciousness on a lower turn of the spiral. And thus the little one, upon the littlest sphere, becomes the greatest God. How? Through the process of initiation, moving on step by step until we radiate, glow, shine, give forth our light, and redeem and elevate others who need it through the radiation of our light. From the directing center of his life, as in the center, he toils and works and carries out the plan. Well, we realize it here and here. We realize the plan. And we direct the energy where it's needed once we are capable of doing so. At first, we have to become quite transparent to the energy, but then without selfishness, we can direct the energy according to the divine plan. From the directing center of his life on earth, he toils and works and carries out the plan. And AAB says the Ajna center is the directing center. He too awakens to the need. And from the chosen place, where, interestingly enough, Saturn is operating, and it's called the planet of choice. And at first it's Earth at the throat center, but then it's Saturn and eventually Uranus. So choice is involved here. He utters forth the sound, which in time becomes the word of the soul. At first the sounds do not reflect the soul, but eventually they reflect the soul itself, and then the three are two, and these are one. So the combining of all the lower centers is brought together in this. What do we have here? We have humanity, we have the Ajna center, and the throat center. All of these on a lower turn of the spiral, reflecting the huge descent of energy which came from the Pleiades, from that fantastic triangular constellation in the sky called Capricorn, and then through Mercury, the great messenger of the gods, and then right down here on our little microcosmic system, the whole thing is repeated in a way that we can handle. So that's part of the great triangle of Great Bear, Sirius, Little Bear, and the Pleiades, giving us the energies that we use to advance on the initiatory path and to integrate our whole system and to get the three aspects of divinity functioning within our system. Now, okay, so I think this is the end, and I think this is where I intended to end. Again and repeatedly, students must remind themselves that we are considering the impact of energy upon energy units. We're an energy unit, and there are higher energies, and a directed force. I mean, directed forces and energies, they both impact. All qualified, these energies are qualified, they have one of the 7 qualities, let's say, and all producing appearance, which is the personality aspect. And we're concerned also with the response of these energy units to the streams of force which reach them from the furthest center. In this case, the Pleiades, 410 light years away, around which we revolve, and really in our local system, the Pleiades are God. It is the development of response to distant points of contact and emanating sources of energy through this that the needed sensitivity is produced. So even though these are cosmic factors, we develop a method of responding to them and increase our sensitivity through enhanced consciousness to all that is around. So that takes us to where we're going to start the next time. I must admit, of course, it was a longer section, and it had much to do with what is practical in terms of making changes in the human condition. And obviously, if we went line by line and dwelt on these things, we could find still more, but I think you get the idea. From the distant source of the Pleiades, around which our entire cosmos system revolves, our little, the 7 solar systems and other local constellations. In occultism, it says the Pleiades are the center, come these great energies. And these energies eventually are transformed to the level of usefulness that man can appropriate and express. So are we related to the Pleiades? Absolutely. Are we related to Capricorn? Yes. Are we related to Mercury? Intimately. And what about humanity as a whole? That's what we are. And we are an agenous center as well as a throat center. And from the farthest to that which we are comes the great streams of energy. So we can't say, oh, that's way out there, it doesn't concern me. No, it does. It concerns us, and these are the energies we use. Okay, friends, so I've gone on quite a while here, but now if you have thoughts or questions about this section, now what I usually do is I try, oftentimes unsuccessfully, to make everything smaller. Why? So that it can be, but I'm not going to succeed here. This is just too much. But I try to get it all under the eye if I can, and I probably can't. Not really, no, I can't. But at least certain things will be under the eye. And if you have thoughts or questions about this, then let's deal with it. I'll leave the first paragraph out of it, and then we'll go to paragraph 4 here, and that's what I'll try to keep under the eye. Okay, your thoughts, your questions, but not only on this. Occultism is one great sphere of knowledge and wisdom, so it can be on anything you want to talk about in the field of occultism. But of course, if there's something here, then that's good too. That's good. And I'll try to get this all together. Is there more? Yeah, but that last part is not important at first. Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll do this. Just a second. There we go. And now I'll try to carry this up. All right. And here we are. Okay. Your thoughts. your questions, your ideas, whatever it is you would like to discuss. I know it's very cosmic. Can we think in these terms? But just go out there under the stars, and just look at the Pleiades, the little jewel box, and realize how central are those energies to everything we are and do in our solar system and on our planet. Who can bind the sweet influence of the Pleiades? I think it says in the book of Job, and I think that's probably the second ray influence. Okay, is there anything? Now, usually I have somebody on staff to help me. Okay, you do have a couple of things. Okay, so we'll go with Tuya and with Vera, who have their hands up. And so Tuya, you go first, then I'll call on Vera. Okay, go ahead, dear.
Okay, good morning to everybody. Few things what came to my mind when reading them from all commentary. When we think about the myths, it's very interesting that we found several legends where the immortal is falling in love or is in love with the mortal, and that's why they come down from their original states. There are stories about Kuan Yin, Vega. What was the other one? I was thinking. Anyway, those. There are some others, what I don't remember at the moment. Yes, there is a story also which is related to Pluto. There's the Demeter and Persephone, but behind them there is an older story how Pluto was in love with the mortal.
Persephone.
And that's why.
Yeah.
Right, but there is another story which is related. But what is interesting is that it is very often that they are separates. How you call that?
Shepherds.
Sorry,
Yeah.
separate. The one,
Shepherds,
the
yeah.
man who is guarding the animals.
Yeah.
And when we think about that, it's related very, very much to Earth itself as the separate, and we see the Christ is having also that symbolism. So it made me think that among the other planets, maybe, or other stars, if we use the planet is a star, we are like on the stage of a separate, what means that the one has risen already from this stage of the flock. So one has become as one who guards already the others. And that is one of the reasons why the immortal falls in love with that mortal. So Maya from the Pleiades falls in love with the separate on earth. And when Kuan Yin, she also was falling in love, and because of that, she was kicked out from the place of the gods. But because of that love, that particular goddess will gain a higher stage, and it will have a quality of mercy. So that was something what I was thinking in relationship, some practical thing that is developing within us, mercy.
See, this is about the fall of the angels. This whole myth.
Fall of the angels.
Fall of the angels is tied in with them, and you pointed to something universal. Prometheus brings fire to man, and then the gods reject him. Now, this is new to me, but Kuan Yin does something, and the pantheon of gods reject her. These are all falls into a lower level. And what I just realized from listening to you is that this very relationship of the superior one who falls in love with the inferior one is exactly the story of the solar angel and man.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
A- and there, when we were reading in, I am on my mobile now, and it's very, very small, but there is this light of love, which is the quality that the Syrian energy is developing with us. So I think that we talk about the great sacrifice of our planetary logos or the sacrifice of the solar angels. There is that theme, and I'm thinking, putting this together, that in order to gain that kind of a light of love, there is the sacrifice what is needed. And that is then developing this some kind of, even though it is not said in this text, but when I'm following the legends and the myths, they are there is that quality of mercy, which is the greatest of the qualities in gods, according to the Kuan Yin myth. But then the other one, I think that was a real revelation. I have been, as you know, that I have been years and years questioning why Sirius is called the star of Mercury. And there are all kinds of things that we can reason, but I think that now we are finding something which is really revelatory. Now we are in Scorpio energies, and Mercury is the highest ruler in Scorpio, which is the one sign of the descending work of in darkness, related to the labors of Hercules in Capricorn, where Hercules is descending in hell. And so Mercury, Hermes, is the only god who has the permission to descend into the hell. And I think that here we see this deeper thing, that what is really happening, that Mercury has some power to really descend into these energies. And when it is related to Capricorn, that actually it is related to Capricorn. So I think in Mercury in Capricorn is really powerful, even though it is the highest ruler of Scorpio, but yet because it has this right to go into the lower than any other gods, even though the Pluto is ruling Hades, but Mercury had the permission to go back and forth. And I think that's why, I think that's why Sirius is called the star of Mercury, because it is again, this whole story what we have been reading now, that the light of love will be developed. These were my thoughts.
Very interesting. Okay, there's a lot there, and in psychoanalysis, we descend into the lower depths of our nature that have long been forgotten, and are, you might say, at the bottom of our aura. But we have to do that with the mind, with Mercury. It's the only safe way to do it. We cannot descend and identify with those energies. We have to keep the detachment which Mercury gives us. And it's a bit like Perseus when he's slaying the Medusa, or at least cutting off the head. He's got to look at that mental shield, because if he looks direct, he has to understand it with the mind, because if he looks at it directly, he'll freeze, he'll turn to stone. So there's something about the use of our mental faculties in the lower worlds, which is safe and filled with understanding. And if we were to descend in other ways, we might be captivated. It's a thought that comes to me from listening to you. Okay, well, thank you, Tuya. And
Thank you.
there's a lot, there's so much. Vera, please go ahead.
Yeah, just basically something similar to what you were just discussing. I was thinking about the sacred and non-sacred planets, and now being in Scorpio, we have the Pluto and Mars prominently figuring in this month. So Pluto is the first ray energy planet, and I know you talked about in the full moon meditation about Pluto bringing death of the personality and killing, and also, well, okay, I need to know how it really works, sort of mechanics of it. And so my reasoning was that, okay, it's the first ray, it's the will, it's the sort of like life itself, it's the power. And because it's a non-sacred planet, it is a little bit murky. So therefore we can respond to it because it's not that pure. And that's why it can actually stimulate that very essence of in us, which is responding, and then in the process, those unhelpful patterns and blockages crack, and we and we deal with that. So I'm thinking that those non-sacred planets, it's for us, for the aspirants, more easier to respond to them than to much higher energy.
The higher aspects of the sacred planets. Of course,
Yes.
there are also ways in which people habitually respond to the way the personality receives the sacred planets. You know, there's a Jupiter. Yeah, there are non-sacred responses to the sacred planets.
Okay.
There are those things. But there are also, when it comes to Mars and Pluto and the Earth, there are things within the personality that have to be redeemed, and the concentration is in fitting the personality for the real touch of the elevating sacred planets. Now, with Pluto, it's very interesting. Pluto is connected with poison and with the elixir of life, and with alchemy in that respect. And it learns how to eject poison from the life. You know how people become embittered, and there's something working on them that is destroying their nature from within. Pluto ejects all that. Pluto is a huge healer and cleanser, ridding the system of poison. Now, there's all kinds of poisons, and maybe the psychic poisons are the worst, okay? But Pluto can rid us of those things that have been tearing our inner organism apart through their lethal influence. And that's why it says of Pluto that it's the power, it's the healer with the power of the serpent. And, you know, of course, it's got the whole Kundalini thing going with it. And as Kundalini rises, it ejects the lesser states. It's a bit like the Om in that respect. So Pluto is very important for the aspirant. Now, I cannot say that Pluto does not work in the life of semi-unconscious people. It does, it works, but not in its real spiritual nature. For that, you have to be an aspirant, and that's why DK basically says Pluto becomes active in the life of the aspirant and beyond. And really, even in the life of the initiate, this is very interesting. Now, when you're a 4th degree initiate and you're making application to become a master, you absolutely need Pluto ruling the base of the spine, because without that, we just don't become a master. And that's the empowerment, first ray, right? And the cleansing of the whole system via the Kundalini. This is Pluto at a later stage of initiation. It's, you know, it's yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you please explain the difference between Vulcan and Pluto?
Yeah, maybe. Well, first of all, page 71 explains it. And so if I was to go to esoteric astrology, either 70 or 71, let's see. Okay, here we go. Here it is. And, this is kind of the statement on it. At the first initiation, the disciple has to contend with the crystallizing and destroying forces of Vulcan and Pluto. The influence of Vulcan reaches to the very depths of his nature from above, okay? Whilst Pluto drags to the surface and destroys all that hinders in these lower regions. So basically, they are two arrows. One of the ways of symbolizing these two planets is the downward pointing arrow of Vulcan and the upward pointing arrow of Pluto, which he says is the true glyph of Pluto. So Vulcan destroys by imposing the will of the soul upon the mechanism and thereby reaching down to where Pluto can begin his cleansing work, and Pluto finds what is hidden and brings it to the surface so that if it's undesirable, we reject it. And the two arrows meet. Now, where do they meet? Do they meet in the heart center? Do they meet in the head center? This is all a process where the soul is shaping us up and Pluto is cleaning us up before the first initiation. And it keeps going. The Vulcan and Pluto keep going. Second initiation, third initiation, even the fourth initiation. They keep going in their own way and continue to give us strength of the spiritual will and the power of the lower system to serve the higher system via Pluto. So this particular page, 70 and 71, give us kind of the picture of it, I think.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Vera. Thank you. Okay. Now, let's see. Now, Tuya, did you have another thing that you wanted to say? Wait a second. You're self-muted.
Okay, now.
Now you're good.
Yes, just a short thought. What was coming when there you were talking about this? That in the myths, Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto are brothers, and when they were dividing the worlds, it landed on the responsibility of Pluto to descend the lowest places. He was not happy, and that's why he has the temper in him. But the reason why he was put the lowest was because of his love, that he was carrying the treasures, as we know that in the Hades there is the treasure box, but and it indicates all kinds of our qualities. But the reason of this descent was because of he had so great love. Yeah. And that's why all the brothers, he had to descend the lowest.
So
again, like the similar story of that, why we descend into the darkness and have this transformation going on.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And even in our modern language, when you are very rich, you are called a plutocrat. A plutocrat. It means, controlling the governmental process through the process of wealth. Now, of course, we can spiritualize that whole idea because the dragon and Pluto, they guard the treasure. And the Kundalini is that treasure, and until it can be liberated into the entire system, we are poor in our powers. But when the treasure is distributed along all the nadis and chakras, we become enriched. And, but that Pluto and love thing, that's very interesting. I think it's so helpful to bring in the mythological angle on this, because
and there is some also one very important point. So Pluto was always unhappy when you descended onto the lower worlds and you didn't have permission to go back, as you know, Persephone has, which is the aspect of the soul. But Pluto was always disappointed if anybody ate, you know, this whole story of that you didn't, when you descended to the lower realms, you were not allowed to eat from that offerings. Because if you ate
Yes.
something, you were bound to that. So Pluto was always disappointed, even though his table was full of all kinds of things to choose. But when anybody ate there, from there, he was very disappointed and angry, because he was then again bound. There is in Pluto, there is the very deep will to go and get rid of, as you were explaining, to not bound to his realms, but to be free from him.
Well, Pluto actually is a liberator. And we understand that Pluto is like a sword, and Pluto is like a scissors that cuts, and Pluto brings freedom ultimately. So, you know, it's in these Scorpio times, we really have to think about this planet. And let's just say that humanity at the moment is in a severe testing condition, and Pluto and Scorpio are very active within humanity at this time. So we're learning more and more about these subtle forces, and we will learn how to use them. Okay, thanks for that additional factor, Tuya. Now, from Anne, and we have Anne Veronica and Anne. So let's just please speak a bit more about the musical key. You say 2 notes make a space. Is that a vacuum? Well, I was thinking about that today. It's a vibratory distance. It's a frequency, it's a point of tension. Each note is a point of tension. The higher the frequency, the greater the point of tension. If I don't have my pitch pipe in front of me right now, but if I was to go da-da-da-dum, dum, 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 that's called a fifth, a perfect fifth. And the da-da-da-da-dum, that note, has the higher point of tension than the note from which it ascended. So they do make a pattern, and every interval. I wrote some stuff on music and the kind of evocation which each interval can summon. When you play an interval, let's say on the piano, because it's easy to do, every interval has its quality. Now, have you ever noticed on sad songs, the minor third is always used like this? Dum 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 da da dee da da dum da dum dum da. That's the minor third, and it is, well, maybe my paper would explain it better, but it's darkened. But if I raise the minor third to a major third, dum da dee da dum dee da da dum, immediately a brightening and a cheerfulness and a Buddhic quality enters. Every interval has its own evocative quality. But then, of course, you have to, study a little bit of music, and in the old days you did, when you were getting into Pythagoras's academy. And coming up in the new schools, music and mathematics, again, in some degree, will be necessitated. So maybe I should send you, and Veronica, or others, I should send some of this musical speculation I have about intervals and chords and their psychological value. 3 notes together, of course, basically that's the first completed chord. An interval is not yet a completed chord. And in the very beginning of a treatise on what's it called? Letters on Occult Meditation. In the very beginning of that, he talks about the chord of man and tuning up the chord of the human being from the bass note to the personality note, which is the major or minor third, to the fifth, which is the soul note, to the octave, which is the monad. And every one represents a different point of tension in relation to either a superior point of tension or a lower inferior point of tension. Okay, now, so anyway, there's a whole thing there which deserves study. And we have to study color, we have to study sound. Now here from Anne, what do we have? What do I have? If we consider that the Pleiades are connected to the cosmic Buddhic in part, also to the cosmic monastic, could we place the Big Dipper and Sirius on the cosmic monadic and the cosmic atomic? Now here's what I think, and about that, page 1162, okay? Page 1162, that in fact, the Great Bear pertains to the cosmic atomic plane. That one of the major influences of the Pleiades pertains to the cosmic Buddhic plane. And there's even though the map seems to show the 7 stars of the Great Bear on the cosmic Buddhic plane, there's a hint on page 1162 which suggests the will and the cosmic atomic plane for the Great Bear. Logoically, you say or logically, I'm not sure, the cosmic Buddhic ought to be a 4th ray field. Well, remember that Buddhi has a tremendous 2nd ray connected with it too, and a 6th ray. It's the whole 246 line. The cosmic atomic, a 3rd ray and a 1st ray as well, because it's the beginning of Brahma. So let me quickly turn to page 1162, which is one of my, we all have our favorite pages. And here's the treatise on, okay. So, and here it is. And you will see the energy of the solar logos, the energy centers of the solar logos, those are planets, are themselves in the form of vast lotuses or wheels, at the center of which lies hidden that central cosmic life we call a planetary logos. Notice, a planetary logos, even a planet, is called a cosmic life. He, the planetary logos, is the meeting place for 2 types of force, spiritual or logoic, which reaches him via the logoic lotus on cosmic mental planes. From the 7 rishis of the Great Bear on their own plane, you tell me what it is, and secondly, of Buddhic force, which is transmitted via the 7 sisters or the Pleiades from a constellation called the Dragon, in some books that's Draco, and from which has come the appellation, the Dragon of Wisdom. So just work on the interpretation of this part, and what you're going to see here is the following. Just got to get there. Here. Even though the 7 stars of the Great Bear have their cosmic Buddhic influence, their real plane is here, and the plane of the Pleiades is here. Now, those are things way, way beyond us, but let's just say what we have to do is develop intuition via the Antakarana and spiritual will via the continuation of the Antakarana to the atmic plane and the adherence to the divine plan. Then, in fact, we will be in a greater position to understand some of these cosmic things about the Great Bear and the Pleiades. Okay. Okay. Well, now let's just see where we are, because time is going on. And I think usually I have somebody over here on staff to help me and tell me if there's anybody else. And okay, some of the questions were technical questions before the program began. Look, just step by step, item of knowledge by item of knowledge, correlation by correlation, Mercury leads to Jupiter. Mercury is the connecting of all units of knowledge into a meaningful pattern which is confirmed by pure reason. Take together the entire purely reasonable picture and you have the unity of the whole under Jupiter, and that's another level of Buddhi. On the Buddhic plane, there are several different types of faculties which are presented. And the three planets, Mercury, Jupiter, and Neptune, maybe in that order, are ascending presentations of Buddhi. Okay, obviously we'll get there. Okay. All right, friends. Now, so what I'm going to do is see if I can, I should have done this beforehand, and we'll see whether I can do it now. Very quickly, if I can be quick about it. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I'm sorry. That's too difficult. Okay, File Explorer. All right, now I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to, let's see, because I'm going to set Tuya up here because she's going to lead us in a little meditation. And I want to make sure that we have, usually I do this ahead of time, okay? But this is it here, 216 and 218. Do we have any triangles in 218? There should be. Am I missing something? Maybe this is where we have to go to, here it is. Okay, here it is. So I'm going to throw this PowerPoint up there, and then we will have our brief meditation. We have a longer meditation, of course, every Wednesday. But now,
Michael, I was
yeah, dear.
that I'm going to do that very briefly.
Yeah, that's fine. Here we are, very briefly.
So
try there.
To follow me.
Is that brief enough? Okay.
Yes, maybe.
Okay, very good. All right, you just go ahead, and I'll just leave it like this, and just a brief alignment of a practical nature, after all of this
Yes.
cosmic consideration. Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, we close our eyes and let us breathe in white light a few times and inaudibly sound Om 3 times. Now we will form a triangle of light, which is formed between our soul, our head center, and with Master DK. See that in firm triangle of light, solid triangle of light. Imagining that the base of the triangle is on the mental plane, and then the lower apex is touching the top of your head. And through that is pouring a stream of light in light orange, golden light orange color. Flooding you, permeating the whole physical nature. Let this light work within you, having no definite ideas as what has to be accomplished. Just rest in that light and bathe in that light. And this we are supposed to do every morning before we start our daily activities and before our group meditation. This is helping us, Master DK is helping in us handling our life problem and our service. Holding our consciousness steadily in the mind. Contact the spiritual triplicity, which is that which hovers over the square and radiates the energy of light into the waiting field of active thought. Us realizing that energy follows thought. Now we call upon our triangle group members by name with love, and we will have about 3 minutes silence that we can sound the names silently or aloud. Visualize now the flow of love and goodwill passing between our members of the triangles. And recognize what it does to the etheric field, how it changes, it denotes sacredness. Visualize now the flow of spiritual light passing between our members in the triangles. We feel the nature of illumination. And now consciously linking up our own triangles with the global network of golden triangles. And recognize again the shift. And we know by heart now that the network of triangles is under the eye of the great Shambhalic triangle, under the three Buddhas of activity in Shambhala. And this is the great work of cooperation that we should be every day more and more aligned and more aware. Thus, we know that in times of emergency within humanity or upon our planet, the Buddhas of activity can energize the triangles of triangles network for protective purposes. And if we would know anything else, this is the fact that we should always be aware of, and thus help that connectiveness by keeping our triangles alive every day. And because the triangle work is related to the coming science of invocation, and also one may be interesting and also important point that when we talk about the time of the Scorpio at the moment, behind the second decade of Scorpio there is a constellation called Ophiuchus, who is also called the god of invocation. So maybe we will keep that also in our minds when we sound the great invocation, by the very deep vigilant and awareness of that we are by our invocation calling those great potencies, and so that the impact can be made on earth. And let us now sound the great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And we see the global network of golden triangles covering the entire planet. Let us see as a growing vital reality of such life and potency that it can break through or break up all limiting outer cleavages, and by the very force of its interior life, eventually externalize itself, which is the most important thing why we are doing this triangle work, because that's the form of the future and how the whole humanity will be linked. We visualize at least 100,000 living triangles functioning within the square-like etheric body of Earth and transmuting it into triangles. And let us try to see Earth as a sacred planet and humanity redeemed. And we sound sacred Om 3 times. Thank you.
Thank you, Tuya. Okay, thank you, everybody. And tonight at 5 o'clock, we have our Dissipation of Glamour webinar. That's 5 o'clock GMT, and we'll try to add into that the last day of our sacred pentagram approach, a little bit of that perhaps. So 5 p.m. GMT will be our work in the dissipation of glamour. So we appreciate your presence, your attendance, and we'll look forward to seeing you again a little bit later in the day. And for now, lots of love from both of us, from all of us, and many blessings. We'll see you now. Bye-bye.